Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on hints and tips for Dynamics 365 Business Central. My name is Tony Stones and I'm a Customer Success Manager for Enhance, and I'll be acting as the moderator for today's presentation. I'm joined by my colleague Adam Carey, who is one of our Dynamics BC and GP consultants. Before I hand over to Adam, I'd just like to go through some simple housekeeping items. We expect the webinar to last approximately 45 minutes. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and it will be available to view on demand. All participants are set to listen only and will remain so for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions during the webinar, please click the questions button on the right-hand side of your screen, and in the new pane that opens, type your questions in the top box and click Ask. Do feel free to submit your questions at any point during the webinar. With that, I'd like to hand over to my presenter, Adam Carey.
Thank you, Tony. Good afternoon, everybody. So the idea of today's webinar is to just kind of give some general hints and tips for Business Central. I'm just going to get rid of this little title screen. I'll flip it onto the next one on the list, so you can see that it's going to demonstration, and then I'm going to go straight into Business Central. This is the Kronos test company that comes as a default kind of play company that exists for Business Central. And it has sort of a generic kind of setup data for you. So our thoughts for today were that I suppose with people that are either using Business Central or new or going to be new to Business Central, it's kind of really just to help navigate yourself around the system, because with it being a web-paged app, there is kind of from an accounting point of view, not really this concept of menu options and click boxes and other windows opening up. So you tend to find that one of the first things that most people need to sort of really kind of get to grips with is navigation and getting around Business Central, finding things that are important to them, and then utilizing the interface that comes with it. As you can see from the homepage here, there is a lot of information on here. It's telling me the company that I'm logged into, and then it's giving me all of these tiles with various information. So my first little hint and tip is going to be for kind of letting you, or trying to remember where you are, because when you log into Business Central, it doesn't ask you which company you're logging into. To sort of change company, I'm sure you're all aware, you would go up to the settings button, and then you can find your list of companies and then you move into them. That's quite fair enough, but that window option doesn't pop open when you log into the system. It just automatically assumes you're logging into the last place that you came to. And because the home page is normally the first place that this exists, that's fine. But when you then start opening up other windows, if I just go into General Journals, the pages start to change, the interface starts to improve, to become more specific, and then all of a sudden I might go away from what I'm doing. I might be on a phone call, I might nip away into a meeting and come back, and then if the window's still in this area here, without kind of looking around, it's kind of, I have to kind of almost leave what I'm doing to go back to find out where I am. I mean, the company name is kind of hidden somewhere up. If I highlight there, up in the URL at the top of the web page, it is hidden away in there, but it's not always easy to see because there is a lot of other information in there. So I tend to sort of suggest to my customers whenever I'm setting them up, and I normally put these in place anyway, but if you haven't got these in place, it's a nice little trick to utilize where you can put the company badge of sorts on the homepage. So if I go up to my settings window, company information now exists in here. You used to have to go and search for it, but I can go to the company information area, and there's this little area towards the bottom that's called the company badge, which I can turn into a custom company badge. And then you're only given 4 characters, so you need to be a little bit creative with it. But so from my point of view, Kronos UK, Adam Carey, because other people log in and utilize this system, and I've got a little bit of play with what color I want that to appear. So I'll leave it with light blue. It'll save that change, and then when I leave that window, the system wants to refresh. It will kick into a refresh automatically for you. And then what you should then see appear up in the top right-hand side is a little kind of icon to let me know which company I'm logged into. So, and now because I'm away from the home page, and if I start navigating around various other areas, that little icon will remain in that side of the window. So I don't have to keep on coming back to the home page to sort of just double check where I am. It's a tiny little change or little thing to sort of switch in, but if you're sort of moving between multiple companies on a regular basis, That's kind of quite unique. I mean, especially if you're coming from other accounting systems, because some of the other accounting systems perhaps used to have like a little area down here that used to tell you in your kind of just above your menu bar in your Windows laptop what company you're logged into. And that's kind of just like a nice little area that kind of like follows that up. And as I start working my way through some windows, I'm just gonna, let's move into customers. And then work into a customer card. So slowly as things are disappearing away, that just remains hovering over there. I look into the historical document of sales. As I say, that little area just stays up there and it kind of gives you a little indication of where you are. So that's my first little hint and tip. And this is the kind of little thing just to make the system a bit more user-friendly for you. The second option that we've got is, although there are search options and navigating around the system, I can obviously, depending on the role that I'm sort of set up as, I'm set up as a business manager. So I have these general kind of menu options that are available to me. And it is quite easy to look at the finance ones, and I can see my journals, my chart of accounts. And it is possible to sort of go in and click this little icon that exists in the top menu bar, and that kind of gives you an overview of everything that exists within here. So this is another good way of working your way around the system to sort of let you know what you have access to. And one of the little things that is quite neat in this little area is this little find option up here. So as I start typing in, so if I say asset, it then starts kind of like scrolling around the system and working out what I'm typing in. So again, schedule, it then starts working its way around there. Let's try and find one with accounts that way. You know, so it's giving you an indicator of where to sort of start going to work your way around the system. So that's another nice little area that I can find. And obviously with the results that I've got, I can then sort of work my way around them. If you don't utilize that window, then the best option that you've got that else is available for you is this little lookup or the go-to window, which is up here. And to me, this is one of the key, I mean, from an end user's point of view, it's basic functionality, but because we've got used to accounting systems that have got menu systems and you're working your way around and you might be able to have shortcuts that are put somewhere. This is, I think, you know, the fact that it's now a web-based system really shows in this area here, because now I can start typing in that, well, I want to do a journal. And it'll go off and it'll show me everything in the system that involves a journal. I've got my areas here, which give me my actual tasks that I can do. It's showing me report analysis that's here, and it's even giving me links to documentation that will take you into a web page, and also little Microsoft App Source areas, so these extra windows. So I can't sort of say enough about how this works. And the nice thing about this area here is, as I say, if I start typing in Ginger, it looks a bit like we're sort of turning into text speakers, but you know, it's gone off and it's found everything that way. So, you know, even if it's a bit of a running joke with one of my colleagues, Mansor, his spelling's not the best, it kind of works out what he's trying to actually say as well. Goes off and finds that information for you. And then that way you've got the ability to quickly look and work your way around the system. So I can't sort of recommend that as much as I can. Once I click into one of these, I'm going to go into general journals now. This is just an extra step, which is really useful and which not many people sort of know about. But when the window opens up, I've got my general journals page. There's this little thing up here that's a bookmark. So I can highlight that. If this is one of the things that I do regularly, I can bookmark this area of the system. And again, I'm just going to go back to my home page now. And as you'll notice on my homepage, my menu options have kind of slightly changed because I've added general journals to that area there. So I'm kind of, although the search option's not too bad, it's, you know, to get to these systems or these areas quite quickly, you can start adding these and they just appear automatically in this little menu bar at the top here. So again, that's another great option that you've got available to you. So sort of speed up the use of the system. And again, it's anywhere that you want to navigate to. I think I've already put bank accounts. So let's just put vendors up there. So vendor, let's put payment journal because vendors already kind of exists. Or payment methods, why not go to payment methods? So again, the generic payment methods that I've got sitting up here, these are the kind of things that you can just sort of add as little shortcuts because there might be little windows that you've got to. And we've all had accounting systems in the past that we've kind of utilized where, you know, there might be a month-end process that you don't do very often because it's a month-end process or it's a year-end thing, and you're kind of, for instance, thinking, oh, where's that window that I want to go to? So it's easy to just save these and put these into here. And what I'm doing here is I'm not changing the system for anybody else, which is another nice little bit of functionality that exists for Business Central. I am just changing, I mean, obviously the company badge will appear for everybody, but this little shortcut here, that's linked to my user account and nobody else. So I'm not upsetting anybody else's system or area and functionality to do that. Lastly, with regarding sort of the search functionality that exists, and I generally normally sort of look at, I mean, the vendors and the customers are a great example of this, but because I don't have a great deal of them in my test system, the chart of accounts I'll just click to as another option. So we've been brought up with sort of defined unique records that exist in accounting systems. So your general ledger account codes, your vendor codes, your bank account options. And you know, I've worked in accounting systems whereby you're going in and sort of clicking on a little icon, and then you're doing like a search. You're either scrolling up and down a list, and again, I can scroll up and down this page looking for things. The page is refreshing itself because obviously it's only showing so many records that exist in there. Or you're doing a kind of an advanced search where you're kind of like, well, description equals or contains. But within each of these list views that we've got here, so you know, Business Central has been built on these lists and these navigation lists that you can utilize. You know, these lookups are just first class because I'm sort of typing things in, even to the fact that whenever you're doing sort of, you know, I have some customers that have used Business Central for 6 or 7 months now, and you know, they need to go and find a vendor record. They don't really need to worry about what the vendor ID is anymore because they just start putting in information that exists within that list. So I can go off, I just take that back to advertising, you know, it just goes off and it finds what I want really quickly. So it's always one of those weird little, it's not a frustration from when you're training people on how to use the system, but sometimes it's that kind of little bit where you're sort of helping somebody with something and they're sort of scrolling up and down the page or they're doing something like that, and it's a case of, well, no, just utilize these areas because they're getting you around the system really, really quickly. So I think these little search icons are really fantastic, and they're things that some people don't tend to use because they kind of have been ingrained in these other accounting systems. Whilst we're in a nice little list with lots of information, these lists are also very customizable. So, you know, this area of personalizations, which are quite nice. And obviously I've got a little area down here where I'm scrolling off to the side and, you know, little things, these are sort of not, you know, these aren't, I suppose, life-changing or bits of functionality, but they're little things that you kind of, once you work out how to use them, you can utilize them really quickly, and it just makes your interaction with the accounting system quite interesting. And one of the odd things is because it's a scroll bar going to left and right, as I start moving off to the side, it starts hiding information. So again, little things that I can do when I'm to utilize the kind of personal changes that I want to make this system work for me. Straight away, there's all these information in the lists that you obviously go in and change. And I can't recommend changing because it's such an easy thing to go in and change these. I click on the settings option, I click on personalize, and again, this little area just exists for me. So the first thing I'm going to do here, just to sort of add as a little kind of neat point, if I hover over the top of the columns, I can obviously move them, I can drag and drop them around by grabbing the flag area that I've got to here. So I could sort of move that to the other side of my values. So it's letting me know what my income type is there. But the one thing that most people don't realize that they can also do with this is by clicking on the little flag, I can freeze the pane. So what I've effectively done here, a bit like in Excel, I'm now holding those two columns so that whenever I scroll around here, they're always going to show. So I've got that bit of functionality in there. And then I can also get rid of certain bits of information that I don't need to see. My totaling accounts, I'm going to hide those out of the way. So again, it's just going through and removing the information that you don't really want to see, and also adding things in that are useful to you. So again, I've got cost type. I don't really want that. So I'm going to hide that out of the way. But what I am also going to do is just remind you that, you know, there are other fields that I can then start pulling in to sort of show other information. These are limited to what you can sort of pull across, but as I say, I'll just pull in account category and pop that in the list. And then just to tidy that up, just get rid of that add field box out of the way, so I've got a little bit more room to work with. And then I can drag that so that it exists in a slightly better position. And then click done, that's changed and that's dealt with now. So now I've tidied up the little scroll bar, because it's always a nightmare seeing something off the end of that. And then as I'm moving that along now, my list view sort of keeps these columns in place. So a nice little kind of bit of utilization that you've got for there. Still staying with these list views, I suppose what a lot of people end up doing when they've got that, so they've tidied up their pages and they've got the little views showing them what they want, and then it just comes back to this sort of process and this kind of habit of, well, I'll scroll up and down looking for what I want to look for and what I want to see. And again, this is where these lists are very interactive and can be utilized for that. There's some really nice functionality that you can exist with the filtering. So I can add the filter pane at the side. It adds this little area to the side, and I can now start running either, there's some totaling that I can look at, which we'll look at shortly, or there's this area where I can use various fields within there to filter something. I can also just use the field itself. So if I highlight, for instance, my line 2, and then I've got my income statement field column, so effectively it's telling me whether it's a balance sheet or an income, I can just click onto this and say filter to this value, and at the side it's going to automatically work out, but because I had already highlighted the line, so it might be one of my account subcategories like cost of goods sold. If I highlighted the line and then up there said filter to this value, I don't need to then go and tell it to do something. I can just obviously put that one in here. And I suppose what I could also look at here is I could start looking at some of the values, and I've got my balance at date. So I'll add another filter into here. And if I go to my balance at date, this sort of ability to kind of have options in there. So if I just put in, and this is utilizing the kind of Excel functionality that exists. If I put in is not equal to, and then work into 0, and then apply that filter, it then filters all of those out for me as well. So I've got rid of all these 0 codes. And then the last thing, which is some nice functionality that wasn't existing previously in a very early version. So if you sort of started in a very early version, you might not have been trained on how to do this or worked out that this little area exists. But I've got the little save option here, so I can just call that, income statement with value. And now I've got a saved view that's available to me. So I don't need to keep on coming into this list view, and it's going to default to the all and everything. But I can now obviously come into here, and I can I've got this little, I'm building up a list of views that are useful to me. So I don't have to sort of sit there and spend 5 or 6 minutes trying to find the information that's really useful for me. And the other one that's quite good as well is, I mean, we're looking at the all data here, and as you can notice, this is one of the things that normally sort of appears. You've got this little net change value, you've got the balance at date and the overall balance, and at the moment they were all kind of telling me the same option. So what I've done is I've got a filter by total. I just click on my view, which is by date. This utilized the filters by total that I created earlier, and what I've now got is I've now added a date filter. There are a handful of filters that I could use. So I could use budgets, I could use some of my key business department analysis groups. Department and customer group are the 2 main ones that are in play for me. But it then gives you the ability, so here, if I've set that to a certain date, and again, this is my test system, so excuse the fact that it's nearly a year old. But now, as you can see, as I'm working my way through, I'm putting a date filter in. So if I just change that to the 28th of February 21, and then update that, you should notice that my net change figures start updating, because that was kind of like, it's then automatically giving me the numbers, the balance of my account at this moment in time is 429,000. As at the 28th of February, it was 390,000, and the net change for February was 3,900, also 3,400. So again, these little kind of filters that you can utilize into here. And I suppose I could also, if I just go back to my standard view, let's just add another one in using one of the cost centers. So filter totals by department filter, and then I'll put that to sales. It's then going to start filtering sort of values in here into this system by just the things that are assigned to sales codes. when I'm looking at the transactional values. And again, if I wanted to, I could save that. So it's just reminding people that these kind of bits of functionality exist. They also, I mean, these can be really useful when it comes to vendors and customers. The test company for the list has got a handful in there, so it's not too much of an issue. Let me just hide that little fact box out of the way. But again, here, this is where, you know, I've just ultimately, when you go to this list as a without any changes to it, and you've got 2,000 suppliers, then this is just going to be full of gobbledygook. So again, the nice, quick and easy thing to do, or to just pop in and do, is to say, well, actually, for my vendors, I just want to have where my balance is not equal to 0. Or I could have it as greater than 0, so it could be, or less than 0. So if I, if less than 0, I shouldn't have any. Let's put that one in correctly. Less than 0. I shouldn't have any because all of my suppliers do have a balance, but that could be utilized as a list to see, well, okay, who we got credit notes sitting outstanding for, for our customers who've who's overpaid us, and so on and so forth. So it's just nice little bits of functionality that people don't tend to use that often. So it's filtered my list, and again, it's only filtered a handful out because I've not got that many, and then it's just vendors with balance. And that's now saved as a view. And whenever I go into there, although it's not going to default to that one, it's quickly in there, and then I can utilize that. I don't need to keep this view available to me. I can just hide that out of the way. It still utilizes that view and works with that. So please, I know some people are a bit worried about thinking, oh, well, I'll change the system around and I'll change what I want to see. Do go in and utilize that functionality to sort of personalize it to fit what you want it to look at. Whilst we are sort of sitting with the list views, what we've also got the ability to do is then you're kind of looking at the information that's of value to you. And I suppose this is where a lot of people kind of like, finding information very quickly. So if I go to my ledger lists, so we've obviously got these little lookups. And if I go to ledger entries, and again, I've long since stopped worrying about putting in multiple options that are available to me. I'm just going to show all of my ledger entries, and then I'm going to start going to, let's go to my customer ledger entries, just as a little option that you can see what's available to you. So again, this is my default list of everything that ever exists. I'm not going to work my way through all of them again. I'm quite happy for them to all sit there. But again, it's utilizing this information, which I can very quickly send out the system, send it to Excel, send it to, I can use the edit in Excel functionality. But it's just working out what these little menu options do available to you. So it's opening all of these options out available to you. So you've got the actions and the related values that are there. So generally, as I'm looking, if I try and find let's go to the invoice there. If I highlight the invoice that sits there, if I sit on the related entries, I've then got the ability to sort of go in and look at what's been applied against these, what sort of information is available to me. So I can go in and I can see if there's an apply record against there. Or I can ask it to go and find the entries. So this is one of the key ones, which is I think most people forget about, but this is kind of almost like a very quick way of getting to your distributions of what's gone on here. So I've gone to my actions, I'm going to find entries for this invoice, and this then opens up a little window to me that shows me everywhere where this is hitting the system. So this nice little entries window that exists, where I can see what's going on. This is telling me everything that invoice is touched within the accounting system. So this was using the jobs menu or the jobs module that exists. So like your project accounting. So I can look into this one here, and I can see the job that was assigned to. I can also then flip back and I can see what entries have been made against that transaction. So rather than scrolling around the system, I can go in and I can see that it's put some entries against my EU standard tax rate. And then I can then also go and look and see the general ledger postings that exist with that. So again, it's a very forgotten way of working your way around the system, because most people might think, well, I'll go into the general ledger entries window and I'll put in account 10200 and I'll see what's gone against that. Whereas, a lot of people forget that this is what you can utilize for that. And as you can notice, as I'm sort of scrolling my way around here, it's just basically filtering different lists to different areas for me quite automatically. And these list views are also very interactive. I can clearly come straight to here. Let's work its way back. because I'm presenting, it works a bit slowly. From this window, I can go in and I can apply entries against there. I can reverse the transaction from there. It's just a very useful area to go in and find the information. And obviously I can go in and get a copy of the document. So, there's very quick ways of working your way around the system to sort of find this information and then utilize what's showing in there. So rather than, the old-fashioned way might be, well, I'll find the customer and then I'll find the customer ledger entries and I'll go searching for that. And again, this search functionality, I start typing in Alpine. Always helps if I spell it correctly. And then again, it starts filtering this list automatically for me as I'm working my way along. Even to the fact that if I start typing in ski, it'll find it from there. So this sort of fuzzy searching functionality, I think is very, very useful. Another little option that most people kind of don't overly utilize, I'm going to go back to my list of options. Let's just go back to here. So I'm going to go to my list of vendors now. So I've got my little list of vendors, and I generally advise people to sort of hide the fact box out of the way. So I've got my little options where I can sort of filter and I can see how the layout options are, and then I've got my information box. I'm going to pull that information up. That's actually quite a useful tool to sort of have available to you. There are certain windows where it doesn't really work. So in the transaction entry window, it's got useful information within there, but it normally gets in the way of what you're doing. At least with this instance, it gives me the ability to sort of work my way down the list and see the information that's of interest to me. So it's given me a whole overview of where the customer is and what's ever gone on about them. I'm going to click on the enhanced count just because it's the one that I went and changed, which doesn't actually have any values posted to it because I literally created it yesterday. And I'm going to go to the attachments area. So again, this for the attachments is this little area of the fact box is really useful for many things. I've got my little note page, which I can continually add notes to there. I can actually put attachments into here, so I can actually have attachments showing against this vendor. But one of the nice little things that they added recently was the ability to add little link pages. So, and my example for using the enhanced one is because as a end user, it might be that there's a query that you've got, and the enhanced support page. I've added a link against the record to take me outside of Business Central and take me to the enhanced support page. That's probably one of the things that most of the people in here would be using, and potentially you've either got the telephone number sort of on speed dial, or you've got a shortcut to the support homepage that exists from there. But this could be really useful, for some of the customers I got here, the worldwide importers. That link might take you to a portal that they've got that allows you to go in and look at that. That link could also be to a SharePoint URL that's giving information that you're not holding within Business Central, but that is can relate back to these customers. So it might be that we've got, for instance, a SharePoint folder with customer information. It might have contracts and documentation. I could go in and I could add that link location into here, and then even though Business Central is not holding that information, I can get to it rather quickly. So I think that's nice little things that can be utilized that make using the system a little bit easier. Finally, I suppose as we're starting looking at the other areas that sort of, I suppose most people sort of forget to utilize when they're using the system. So I'm going to go into, for instance, let's go into enhance. So I'll go into the customer record. And obviously the various bits of information that you've got here, and then I can create a new document, and let's create a new purchase order. And then I suppose one of the things that some users of accounting systems, because they've been used to a Windows-based system that just opens up multiple windows, whenever we're doing training with people, it's a case of, well, you can kind of just about see that it's building up this little step ladder as it's working its way through the system. But what also you do have the ability to do is you can open this in a different web page. You can basically extricate it from the system that you've got. I'll just wait for that to load. Very slowly. So what I've now got is I've now got an extra little window that I can now, snap side by side. I can have information sitting that I want to look at from here, and I can, open up multiple windows side by side, and then it just sort of gives me that ability to, theoretically, I've now got my home page that's sitting there, and I'm dragging them off of screen, so that's obviously not overly useful. Let's just make those a little bit smaller. And then let's make that one a little smaller as well. So I can kind of, to an extent, have like a little bit of a Windows-based system that exists for me. Why can't I drag that one back in? There you go. So, if you've got a nice like wide screen, sadly my laptop doesn't, I can have multiple windows that are open for me. It will be showing, oh look, you have, it is a bit like the other accounting systems where you've got multiple things open, rather than the generic, well, it's just one page that keeps on opening on top of all of the others. So there is that functionality, and as I say, some people forget that that actually exists and works for that. So the side-by-side option is really quite useful for you. And finally, I suppose one of the sort of nice little things that the system does have is it does have this little edit in Excel functionality. So if I wanted to update location codes for all of these, so for all of the list of vendors, if I wanted to put something in here, I can use that little link. Clicked on the wrong one. The edit in Excel, and it'll open up some functionality to sort of let me open the spreadsheet in Excel, make a change, and then suck it back in. But what it also has functionality-wise is the ability to, let's get back to my purchase order. Did I shut that document down? I did. Right, okay, so let's just go back into Enhance. Let's just open up my purchase order on screen. And go down to my little area here. So again, this window's quite busy. I can expand that to make this a little bit more, useful for me. The focus mode, most people don't utilize very often because it kind of hides other areas, but you do, it does help with this little scroll bar that's going across the screen and this little limited area that you've got. So I'm going to expand that anyway so that I can see that I've got a bigger space to work with now. It's kind of opened up that little area for me. And let's just put in a quick item code. Let's just go for the Athens desk. And I'll put in a quantity of 1. So, I can, how this would be utilized, but there is nice copy and paste functionality that just exists. So if I click on the little arrow here and use Control C, it's telling me here that I've got a row that's been copied. And if I just then go back and I've pasted that into an Excel spreadsheet, so what it's then done is it's added all the fields that of any use for me in this option here. So where this could come into play quite nicely is I can now just use Excel to copy some various information. I'm just going to copy the key sort of data that's going across the page. Let's see if I can get that to, yeah, so it's given me a multiple list of things. So even though I've got all of this other information that's pulling itself across, so the back code and so on and so forth, what I can now do is I can now just highlight the areas that I want. I could fill out the rest of this, but I'm confident enough that the receipt dates and the quantities and everything will just update automatically because it knows it knows the unit of measure, it knows the price and the standard back code. So I'm just going to copy that back into here. Let's just get rid of my spreadsheet. So I'm going to go to the next blank line. I'm going to click on that little arrow, Control V, and it's now just pasted all of those lines back in for me. So, this could have been a document that I've got something in Excel that I'm pulling information from. It might be that you've printed something, you've downloaded a CSV file for an order that needs to go into the system from your web page. Or it could be that you're posting a journal and you don't want to sort of worry about utilizing the copy and paste functionality or the edit in Excel functionality, should I say. But that's kind of effectively brought all of those lines in for me just with, basic copy and paste. So it's a nice little bit of functionality that exists that not many people kind of utilize because they tend to think, well, if I want to do something like that, then I need to use the edit in Excel. And edit in Excel is really quite nice. Let's just open that up. But for anybody that's used it in any great regularity, it is kind of ultimately to the extent of Microsoft's point of view, a free kind of way of updating the system. So, and it is always this annoying, well, I've got to enable the editing and then I've got to log in. So let's just make sure that it remembers who I am. Being a consultant that I log into multiple customers, I always have this problem that I've got lots of people that it thinks I'm logging in as. So let's just find the right one that I want to log in as. And it's nearly there. You know, this functionality is really quite nice, and the ability to go in there. But what often scares most people when they're utilizing this is the fact that you've got lots of, because I mean, you know, there's database tables in the back end. There's a lot of information that gets populated by this, and this can be quite a scary thing to go in and look at, because you're thinking, well, what exactly do I need to fill in here? I can hover along the columns and I can look at the side to see what they are. And I can see where there are some fields that it doesn't want me to put anything in, because it'll tell me that it's just like a field that I want to change or not change. So, you know, that's nice functionality, but sometimes it can be a bit scary. And, you know, for the fact of just having this little, if I copy out the line that I'm looking at, okay, it's giving me everything that I'm seeing here. But, you know, if I know the tax rates are standard 23, standard 20, exempt, or S0, what have you like that, I could then go in and I could update the fields that I want and then paste them back in. I don't need to populate everything, because I know the rest of the options that are available to me. Let's hide that out of the way. And there's my document that I can look at. I can exit the focus mode, and then I'm back to my transaction. Let's just leave that sitting at the side there. So that's me coming to I suppose it was a bit of a whistle-stop sort of tour of some sort of new features and bits of functionality that are available to you. And I kind of was trying to keep this session relatively straightforward and not too complicated, so that you didn't sort of like get sort of bamboozled with lots of things that you had to go in and learn. And it was really kind of like just to familiarize yourself with how to work your way around the system, and how to sort of work a bit more efficiently. So by going through and changing what you've got. The last thing to really sort of remind people of is, whenever, you know, I suppose because I utilize that sort of function to show where the support desk is, there is this nice little help and support button that appears at the side here. And this is quite useful in that it does then give you the ability to sort of tell you if you do need to report make a call or log something with the support desk, that, you know, very quickly, if the questions will come up, so which version is it running, and so on and so forth, and tenant IDs and all of that, it all exists in this little help and support guide that you've got here. So what I'll do, as we're coming up to 22, I will move on to the next slide, and I will hand you back over to my colleague, Tony. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thanks, Alan. That was a really useful session, and I hope people have picked up some really good hints and tips from that. So that concludes today's session. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Can you please keep a lookout in your inboxes over the next few days, because we will actually send you a link to today's recording. So if you want to share that with colleagues within your businesses, obviously you're more than welcome to do that. And there was also a webinar that we're going to have at the end of this. It's a short survey. We'd really appreciate it if you actually could take a few minutes to complete it. It's actually really important, and I know most people think, oh no, not another survey, but we actually use the information and the feedback from these surveys to choose content for future webinars, so it is fairly crucial. Also, I'd like to point out on the slide as well, we've got some contact details there for people if you want to speak to anyone, and obviously you've got your account managers as well, that I'm sure you know their contact details already. And finally, we've got a Microsoft Dynamics Business Central wave release on the 22nd of March at 2 o'clock till 2:45. If anyone wants to attend that, please feel free to go onto the website and have a look at that. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.